Hey, what's going on, everybody, and welcome back to my channel, Movie Files. Elliot back again with a brand new spoiler review, breakdown, and recap of the latest MCU film in Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Now, this is a full spoiler discussion, so if you haven't seen the film quite yet, no worries. I did a spoiler-free review that you all can watch and enjoy, but if you've seen the film, you are in the right place. We're talking everything Shang-Chi, from the beginning to the end, the highs, the lows, what worked, what didn't work, and of course, we're talking about the ending as well as those two post-credit scenes and what it can mean for Phase 4. We're breaking it all down here in this spoiler review, but before we do so, make sure you're checking me out on all my other social media accounts. If you all are new to the channel, well, welcome to the community. Consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you can get the alert for when I drop new content. If you all enjoyed this spoiler discussion of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, well, make sure to like and share the video. It helps out the channel a lot, but also appreciate the support. And again, this is all spoilers, so go ahead and spoil everything. What worked for you, what didn't work for you, what you think of the origins and everything that we got with this film. We're talking post-credit scenes, so what does it mean with the Bruce Banner being the human version of the Hulk? What does it mean that Captain Marvel's so busy, and Wong, and where the hell is Doctor Strange and Abomination? Wong being tied to Hulk, like, what's going on? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. So again, you can check out my full analytical thoughts in a non-spoiler way, but this is more of a discussion. So we're going to be breaking down the film, recapping the film. I'm going to be kind of talking about what worked, what didn't work, and of course explaining what I took as the post-credit scenes and what I hope to see in the future of the MCU. So I'm going to leave time codes and chapters in the link below so you can kind of know what we will be tackling in this discussion. So with all that being said, let's talk about the opening of the film. And we're immediately introduced to Wenwu, as also known as the Mandarin. He doesn't go by the Mandarin in this film. He goes by many other names, but not necessarily the Mandarin. But we go by Wenwu, which again, I said in my spoiler-free review, the best character in the entire film. But nonetheless, I love how the film opens and shows us the conquering of civilizations that Wenwu has been doing for thousands of years. My only criticism with this opening sequence: Legend of the Ten Rings. I don't feel like the film, and again, we're going to probably learn more about the Ten Rings, especially with that first post-credit scene, but I wish the film would have gave us a little bit more explanation of where did Wenwu get these rings, and what are the importance of the rings, where are the origins of the rings. Again, it's the MCU. They're going to probably explore it on a Disney Plus show, or more importantly, in a movie, but I wish we would have explored that a little bit more. But nonetheless, again, we learn that he's been around for thousands of years, which I assume that the rings give you, you can live forever, right? I assume that nonetheless, but we see he's been conquering civilization for 1,000 years, and he comes across the Great Protector, and he wants to get this power for himself and the legends of gods and the martial arts of gods. So he's really infatuated by that. So he makes his way to the bamboo forest, and that's where he meets his love of his life, and ultimately the parents of Shang-Chi and his sister. So we see their love story, which was very sweet, and I love that sequence of that karate fight. It was very awesome. But we kind of get the origins within that first 10 minutes, and again, we learn that she later on dies, and that he kind of put the 10 rings aside, but then he has to come back to the Wenwu and the persona of this villain that we know him to be. So I really enjoyed the opening, except for I wish they would explain more of where the origins of the 10 rings come from. But let's cut into modern day. Now, this film does take place after the blip, which I wish, again, as far as like, not necessarily criticism, but I wish the film would explain, okay, was Wenwu, was he blip? Was Shang-Chi, was he blip? Who was blip? They don't really explore that, and as well as this film takes place in San Francisco, and I thought that maybe we were going to get a Scott Lang appearance or the Wasp appearance, but none of those characters make their way into the film, which is fine. We do get some Avengers, some Marvel characters that make their way into the film, but nonetheless, we're reintroduced to Shan, who goes by Shan, who we know him as Shang-Chi, but his name is Shang, which I love that running joke between him and Katy in regards to just how simple that name was and how easy it is for him to find. But we see that Shan and Katy are best friends. They've been friends for a while, which, again, I'm just kind of thinking in my head, this is more of a discussion, but Shan, or Shang-Chi, when he doesn't do the mission that we learn about when he's 14, and he makes his way to America, where did he get money from? Was he adopted? Who picked up this kid? Where did he go to school without having parents? It was kind of confusing. I assume that maybe Katy parents maybe took him in, but it really doesn't explain what he's been doing when he was in high school and college and got to this point, who was taking care of this kid at 14 years old. But I guess that's neither here nor there. But again, Sean hasn't been living up to his expectations, nor has Katy. We see very early on that the parents want them to be married, and I love that Katy's grandmother brings up, honoring the dead and all that stuff. And again, the culture of this film was really represented pretty well in my opinion. But again, we see that they're not being the people that their parents want them to be, which is a big theme in this movie in regards to legacy, and what your name means to you is very important. But let's cut to the first big action set piece, which we saw in the trailer. There's a clip online about it. Obviously, if you've seen the film, that action set piece was awesome. That was like the perfect mixture of great karate, great kung fu, great martial arts, but also some good comedy beats, also just some great cinematography, some great choreography. That opening set piece in regards to really learning who Shang-Chi and how he can handle himself was really well done. I love when he is, he punches the dude in the stomach and Katie's like, who are you? And I just love that sequence. And again, the comedy beat with the guy who I think has appeared in Spider-Man films and some other previous films. I just kind of love the way that they introduce Shang-Chi going hand to hand, and he can handle himself when it comes to a fight. But nonetheless, we see that these guys are hired or a part of the 10 Rings and brought in by Wenwu to get the pendant, which is very pivotal to the plot in regards to the dragon eyes and obviously getting his wife from behind the wall. But we see him ultimately go toe-to-toe with these guys, and then this is where we get introduced to Razor Fist. Now, I said it in my spoiler-free review, I thought that Razor Fist as well as the Death Dealer, very underwhelming, very cool looking, the razor arm, and he takes the dragon stuff and fighting all the creatures. That was all cool. Death Dealer looked cool aesthetically, but I honestly wish the film would have completely erased the Razor Fist. I know it's probably in the lore of Shang-Chi and probably people expect that character to be there, but I wish they could have just taken out Razor Fist and gave us more of the Death Dealer. That character to me was so cool. It would have made more sense to have him be so connected to Shang-Chi because he trained him when he was young. So I thought that would have been very cool if we could explore that character more. But instead, we get the Razor Fist guy, which only had like 5 lines and really wasn't intimidating to me at all. And then his whole twist, which we'll talk about at the end, like, the 10 Rings are supposed to be this formidable group that's been training for years under Wenwu, but then they just can switch on a drop of a dime. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But again, I wish that Razor Fist was replaced by exclusively by the Death Dealer. He was like the main foil, not the main foil, obviously the secondary character to Wenwu. So that's kind of a criticism to me. But again, I love that sequence on the bus was pretty action packed and really fun to see. But we kind of transitioned from Katy figuring out you're not Sean, you're not who you are, who are you, and that's where we get kind of the exposition, and he explains his story in regards to how he was trained to be an assassin. Once his mother passed away, Wenwu wanted his son to take up the 10 Rings, and unfortunately that meant that it was less time for Shang-Chi's sister to get any attention. So we see her kind of origin stories. She's always looking in the background. She wants to be a fighter. She wants to learn more. She wants to be better than the guy. So I kind of like that subplot, even though I thought her character was kind of forgotten about. And obviously we can explore more of her in the future, but I thought that whole left me when you were younger and the mom and the sister and the dad, that kind of relationship felt not as developed as I thought that they could have explored more in that story. But again, Sean, aka Shang-Chi, explains everything to Katy when they make their way to meeting his sister, who he thought left her a postcard to meet her in this, which I thought was a huge missed opportunity. I don't know the name. I can't think off top of what the name of the city was that his sister was the underground boss of for this fighting sequence or this fighting underground scene, but it would have been so smart if it would have been Machapur, right? I might be pronouncing it wrong. I believe it's Machapur, but we meet that city. We understand this world when we go to Falcon and Winter Soldier, and that's like a lawless area. People can get away with crime. I thought that would have been great to have that be the main city, which it wasn't, but I thought that was a missed opportunity. But nonetheless, we see that his sister is the head boss, and again, I love that she is like, my dad didn't love me, you left me, I can create my own empire. I thought that was so cool, but I thought her character just slowly was forgotten about by the time we get to the third act. But seeing all that stuff, this is where all the Easter egg comes in. I believe we had a extremist soldier, which you guys remember the extremist program was in Iron Man 3. We saw them. I believe there was a Black Widow character in the background, one of the Black Widows that got away. But everyone knows the big Easter egg in this sequence is obviously seeing Wong versus Abomination. I mentioned in my spoiler-free review, yes, as an MCU Marvel fan, it was cool Easter eggs, it was a cool fan service, but it meant nothing to the story, and it actually makes no sense in my personal opinion. Why would Wong be fighting the Abomination? Where has Abomination been this whole time? I thought that General Ross maybe had him in the Rift, but apparently he's just out and about and just fighting people in this underground fighting sequence. Where has he been? Why are him and Wong friends? And more importantly, it speaks to Wong being friends with Bruce Banner, and we know that Bruce and Abomination have beef, or do they have beef? I don't know. I didn't really like it because it didn't make any sense whatsoever. Again, where has Abomination been this whole time, and why is he friends with Wong? Neither here nor there. Let me know what you all thought about Abomination. Again, it's cool. It's an Easter egg, but I'm just like, it doesn't make sense to me. And I don't know. Again, Abomination, we'll be seeing this character again in She-Hulk series, so maybe they'll explain why he's a part of Wong's crew. Again, Wong wasn't blipped, so Wong was the Sorcerer Supreme when Doctor Strange was gone. So I don't know. He's running things now, and I guess he can be friends with bad people in the MCU. Neither here nor there. We see that Shang-Chi has to face this warrior, and it ends up being his sister. He doesn't want to fight his sister. She ends up kicking his ass. They have their whole conversation about how she felt about being left and being forgotten about. And she, obviously Shang-Chi is there to warn her about the pendant, to warn her that dad is coming. And she's like, wait, who told you to come here? I didn't tell you to come here. And that's where we see the postcard was actually a diversion and kind of setting up the dad, getting both of his, kids there for he can get both pendants. And that's where we get the really cool action set piece. Reminded me a lot of Rush Hour 2 with the bamboo and fighting on the side of a building, but obviously higher budget and a lot more seriousness within this scene. But this is where we see Shang-Chi yet again being a badass and taking on the Legends of the Ten Rings, or taking on the the army there. And that sequence was great, especially when his sister gets in the mix. So again, I wasn't a fan of her storyline, but I thought she was a complete badass, and I'm excited to see what they do with her moving forward. But I thought that sequence was really cool. But we see Shang-Chi facing on against his, his trainer, and that was a death dealer, which again, why couldn't the death dealer be the, the secondary main villain versus Razor Fist? But they fight, which was such a cool looking, reminded me of the James Bond film, when they were in that tower fighting, and the background, the lights and the colors was just so fantastic. I thought that sequence was incredible, but unfortunately, it was cut short. The fight was cut short because Wenwu was there to get his kids and welcome them back home. And that's where we get the whole kind of explanation, the kind of the main story plot of this film, and why Wenwu wants his kids back home, and him letting Shang-Chi live his life. And obviously he could care less about his daughter, because he says, which is a really sad moment, the reason that he neglected his daughter all these years and when she was younger is because he said that she reminds him of the mother, which is, a very common thing that we hear when it comes to, parents losing, or husband or wife losing their significant other. The kids reminds them of them. So we get all that plot, but he tells them he wants their pendants because he's been hearing from their mother beyond death. And this is where the whole, what's going on here, right? Are we dealing with the supernatural? Are we dealing with deviance potentially, which we'll talk about in the post-credit scenes? But this was like, okay, what's really going on? What is the MCU trying to introduce here? And this is where we get the cool water sequence that he tells them that their mother's native land, which I believe was Ta Lo, didn't welcome him in, which makes sense because he was obviously a murderer and a killer and a conqueror of many years, but they neglected him. So he's always had this resentment towards this civilization of this. This isn't just you can go there. This is a whole new dimension in the MCU. This is a whole new, situation. This is like Wakanda, right? This is like a secret, well, not even Wakanda because it's on Earth. This is like beyond Earth, this lowland place, which is just like, okay, does this tie into Eternals, or have they lived on this planet? Are they aware of this? Obviously, it looks like Wong wasn't even aware of these people, nor the Sorcerer Supreme. So I hope we revisit that native land in that area, because it really fascinates me. Are these people immortal? Do they have special abilities when they tie into the nature and the wind and all that? I really want to explore more about the Ta Lo people. But again, he explains to his kids that this is why I want the pendant, because your mom is alive, and obviously we know that this is trickery based on whatever's behind that wall, that evil entity, which again, does it tie into Dormammu? Does it tie into Eternals and Deviants and all that stuff? Only time will tell, but I'll talk about my theories a little bit later. But moving forward, Shang-Chi does not want to be a part of this, and he obviously throws the kids into the dungeon. And this is, to me, where this is one of my main criticisms of the film. I know that Marvel thinks that this is a funny running joke. I don't find it that funny. I love Ben Kingsley as an actor, one of the greatest of all time. But him as Trevor, I know people find it very funny. I did not find that character funny at all when they introduced him and they introduced Morris and the whole kind of, that's when it kind of felt like a Disney movie. It felt like Raya in The Last Dragon, which I love that film, but it felt like very childish when they brought him into the story, and he's just like a big joke, and that whole thing, and they escape the headquarters, and they get the Razor Fist car. They make their way to the Bamboo Forest, which again, the Bamboo Forest was cool, but it really wasn't explained that well. And just the jokes with Trevor and talking to Morris and does he understand you? Go now, all that stuff to me. I didn't check out, but it was like I wasn't intrigued. I wasn't compelled. I wasn't really interested in that storyline because everything that Trevor has to offer is just like all the goofy, silly MCU stuff that I'm just not a fan of, me personally. Again, comedy is very subjective, but I did not find. I wish that they could have maybe put in another character, someone that maybe grew up with Shang-Chi and his sister. I wish that they completely, again, I know that they had to wrap that up because obviously Trevor was going by the Mandarin, but they could have just gave him that sequence and then just left it there. But he was like pivotal in the rest of this film, right? But I just wasn't a fan of the Trevor character. I know I'm probably in the minority, but let me know if you guys enjoyed the inclusion and in the story and the jokes and Morris and Trevor and all that, or you were like me and was like, I could have went without that. I could have went without it personally. But nonetheless, we see Shang-Chi and his sister and Katy and Morris and Trevor make their way to Tai Lo, and this is where Michelle Yeoh, incredible actress. I wish we would have got more from her character, which she's still alive, so we could potentially learn more about her. But this is where she gives us the exposition and explains this dimension that is off Earth and the lore and how they fought against the evil demons. And again, were they helped by the Eternals? Were they helped by other special forces? But we see that the thing that kind of saved them from being destroyed was the Great Protector, this ancient dragon that protects the land and the people of the land, which was so cool to me when we introduced that element of the film. Again, it was a CGI fest, but I think that the whole element of like the dragons and the connection of the lore and the mythology and all that stuff was really, really cool. So this is where the film kind of felt a bit rushed because we learn about this new dimension. We learn about this evil entity again as a tie into supernatural, Dormammu, Moon Knight, all that kind of stuff, ancient gods. Is it tie into that? Is it more to, the space stuff with the, Eternals? A lot going on. And then I felt like the film kind of deviated from the conflict between Shang-Chi and his sister. It deviated between Shang-Chi wanting to become, to kill his father. We learned that he actually did go through the mission of killing, when he was a 14-year-old, killing the man that was responsible for the death of his mother, which that was a pretty interesting scene. Again, I mentioned it, Wenwu, such a layered, complex character. Seeing him taking Shang-Chi to kill these men was so great. And then giving him the responsibility to kill the man responsible for killing his wife and the mother of Shang-Chi. All that stuff was great, but it was just kind of lost and felt so rushed because once we go to Tai Lo and once we see that he inevitably finds, the island, and we see the 10 rings make their way there, which I mentioned in my non-spoiler review. The 10 rings, I thought they were supposed to be like the army, but they were like maybe like 15, 20 deep. And again, I understand that Wenwu, he had to rebuild the Legends of the 10 Rings because he was married and kind of put that life behind him. But I felt like the 10 Rings were just a little underwhelming. But nonetheless, we get the standoff between the 10 Rings and obviously the people of Tai Lo, including Shang-Chi, Katy, Trevor, Morris, as well as, all the native people there. And this is where the film again, and we get all this action, all this hand-to-hand combat, all this great martial arts. It's in the third act, but then it gets convoluted with all the CGI. The 10 Rings were cool, but it was like Sonic and Dragon Ball Z, and they were, obviously we get the fight between the father and the son, Shang-Chi and Wenwu, and that fight was fine. I just wish it was less of the CGI and more of the practical effects. Then we get the introduction to, Wenwu takes out his son. He thinks that he kills his son. He goes underwater, which awakens the Great Protector, which felt like a moment of the, for my Game of Thrones fans, I was just waiting for Khaleesi and Jon Snow to pop up. Because when we get the dragon comes from the water, ultimately we see that Wenwu with his 10 rings unleashes. Again, what is this dark presence? Where does the origins of this dark presence come from? And this evil entity is it tied to Dormammu? Does it tie into the Eternals and Deviants? It's really fascinating, and again, it was pretty dark, right? We see they suck the souls out of their victims, which we see, again, the Death Dealer was such an underwhelming character. And again, we see Razor Fist and the 10 Rings. They just see Death Dealer get killed, and they're like, okay, we can work together. I'm like, you guys supposed to be the 10 Rings, the most formidable assassins besides, Winter Soldier program. You guys supposed to be the real deal Holyfield, but they just, obviously they want to survive, but I just felt like that was just a little bit too unbelievable. They just turned on the hat of a dime. But nonetheless, we see this big fight of the native people fighting against the evil entity. We see the two dragons fighting in the air, which again reminded me of Game of Thrones. And ultimately, we see Shang-Chi is able to take the light and the bad, the good and the bad, the dark and the evil, and conquer his dad and take the 10 rings for himself, which ultimately we see his dad goes to be in the Luke Skywalker, Darth Vader moment where the son is protected and saved by the dad. We see ultimately when Wenwu saves his son and gets his soul sucked, which mentioned in my non-spoiler review. A phase 1 mistake. Why kill off such a complex, interesting character in Wenwu? Again, we know from Loki, there's probably a variant version of him out there, but I just wish, I hope we get more of that character because he was so great. Tony Leung is such a great actor and such a complex character. I'm just like, why would you kill him? Why did you have to do that? But he ultimately dies in protecting his son, which I get the sentiment of it, but I just wish they didn't have to kill the best character of the film, in my opinion. But nonetheless, we see things are kind of looking bad for the team, and we see the dark entity, the dark dragons winning at this point, but ultimately we see Shang-Chi, our hero, ultimately ride the dragon, gets his rings, takes out the evil deed, and they actually take out all the evil monsters. But again, where do these monsters come from? What dark dimension are they from? Again, I'm thinking Moon Knight, I'm thinking Eternals, I'm thinking Dormammu. It's a lot going on there, but I love that element, but I just want to know the explanation of where they come from. But we wrap up the film with Shang-Chi and Katy being, this team now, and obviously Shang-Chi thinks that his sister is shutting down the 10 rings, which we'll talk about the post-credit scene here, but they're out talking to their friends about everything that went through, and they're just like, they don't believe them. But then we get the circle. Wong invites Shang-Chi and Katy to go on this journey to be the heroes that we are expecting to be in phase 4. So that's the end of the film, which brings us to our mid-credit scene, which was pretty awesome. So we get Wong talking to Shang-Chi, exploring the 10 rings and what exactly is the 10 rings. And they notice that there's a beacon. There's something that's signaling out to somewhere out there in the galaxy, somewhere out in the dimensions, the dark dimensions maybe. And this is where we see our man Wong, which I thought it was going to be Doctor Strange. Where the hell is Doctor Strange, ladies and gentlemen? Paging Doctor Strange. Where are you? He's out, fighting the multiverse with Peter Parker, I guess. But nonetheless, Shang says, have you ever seen this before? And it is no other than Bruce Banner, which was cool to see. But why is Bruce Banner in human form? I have said it once and I've said it again. Marvel has been screwing over the Hulk fans for the longest time. I haven't liked the Hulk since probably, he was fun in Thor Ragnarok, but I'm talking about the menacing, the strongest Avenger. We haven't gotten that since Avengers, right? Everything else has been a joke. They don't know what to do with Mark Ruffalo at this point. I know the whole thing with Universal and the rights and all that is really effing up their storylines, but I'm just like, why is he in human form? Why is the Hulk so weak? But nonetheless, he's in his human form. He doesn't know what's going on. And then pan the camera over. They ask another person, and that is Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers, played by Brie Larson, which makes sense that she's going to be in this film because she's in 90% of Destin Cretton's films. They work together a lot. So she's like, I'm not sure what it is, and then she has a whole I'm busy thing. Number one, her hair is a lot longer than when we saw her last time in Endgame, but I imagine she's busy because it ties into the Marvel's movie directed by Nia DaCosta. So they are exploring this whole situation. They don't know, where's this beacon? Is it calling out to another evil deed? I think it actually, to me, I think this ties more so into the Eternals more than anything, because I think it makes sense that these dark entities are particularly connected to the Deviants. I personally think that, and the Eternals might explore that origin in regards to, as they mentioned in the trailer, which was epic for the Eternals, that this whole emergence was sparked by everyone coming back from the blip. So I think that this ties into the Eternals, and I think that these might be Deviants that might all kind of tie into this situation with Phase 4 with multiverse, and obviously what we're going to get with Doctor Strange and into Multiverse of Madness, but also, Celestials and all that stuff. So I think that really kind of ties into what we can expect to see in the next film with the Eternals. That's why I think Shang-Chi came before this film, because I think they're going to actually tie more together than we initially think. So first post-credit scene, pretty awesome. Second one was pretty unique. So after the credits run, we see that Shang-Chi's sister is in her room, and she says she's going to start to dismantle the 10 rings, but nope. She is, as her whole storyline, she wants to be the leader. She wants to show her dad that she is able to lead a organization in the 10 rings, and she is doing that exact thing. She is now the leader of this kind of decimated version of the 10 rings, and she says it's time to go to work, and we see on the screen 10 rings will be coming back, which I thought was weird. Why would you say the 10 rings are coming back and not Shang-Chi is coming back? Because he's obviously the big character from the film. But I am to assume that second post-credit scene means maybe a spin-off series with the Ten Rings, or maybe the Ten Rings, and I think this might happen more than anything. I think that Shang-Chi's sister will be connected to Armored Wars. Obviously, this goes back to Iron Man 1 with the Mandarin being introduced, and I think this is going to obviously kind of full circle, if you may, with Ten Rings. It makes sense that we would see the Ten Rings be a part of Rhodey's story, and all the different guns and weapons and weaponry that's out there, it would tie into the Ten Rings. So I think the next time we'll see the Ten Rings will be in Armored Wars, which can set up, Doom Wars with Dr. Doom and all that different stuff. We're getting really, thinking out there now. But I also think the other possibility is that, which I'm not a big fan of the reveal of this character, but I thought it would have been interesting if the power broker was in the room with her. And again, that was maybe the person she was on the phone with at the end of the Captain America, or Falcon and Captain America. She was talking to Shang-Chi's sister and setting up all this again, which I think that character, Sharon Carter as the power broker, will be another villain or a character that we can look forward to seeing in Armored Wars. I think Armored Wars will be a very important show tying into Ironheart, which we got the reveal that Riri Williams will be in Black Panther 2. So I think all this stuff, war and guns and weaponry and Iron Man suits on the market, will ultimately tie into Dr. Doom, being that he is someone that loves control and technology. So I think this is all kind of setting up for multiverse. Obviously the Celestials and Eternals, but also the more grounded and big bad that we can look forward to in Dr. Doom. So that's my thoughts on the post-credit scenes. That's my wrap up, my breakdown of Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. Again, I gave the film a 3.8 out of 5. Really solid film. Had a lot of great moments. Not a great film, but a lot of great moments with some great character moments between Wenwu and obviously his son. So really good film with a lot of good stuff to look forward to in the future of the MCU. So again, I hope you all enjoyed this discussion. Again, it wasn't all that structured, but again, I just wanted to have a fun time, talk to you all, geek out with you all. So let me know in the comments, what did you like about the film? What didn't you like? What do you hope to see in the future? What's your thoughts on the post-credit scenes? Wong and Abomination, what's their connection in the future? Let's talk about it all in the comments below. If you are stuck around to the end of this video, thank you so much for watching this video. Make sure if you haven't already to like, share, comment below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hope you all are staying safe. Hope you enjoyed this review. We'll see you on the next video.